All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our second Public Safety and Admin Subcommittee budget hearing for the session. For the record, I am Chair Delegate Jazz Lewis, and we have another full day ahead of us as we cover the budgets for several agencies across our state's government. First, I want to welcome, I had on here Fagan Harris, but I'm looking at Deputy Chief of Staff Pokuya Wusu-Achao, so I'm assuming she is speaking on behalf of the Governor's Executive Department. But thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to the report on the important work of the Executive Office of the Governor and that of the various boards, commissions, and offices that our executive branch manages. I'm particularly interested in hearing from your office about the novel innovation team that was added and how things are going to work with that concept and program. We're also joined by several other departments like the Maryland Tax Court, which is charged with providing administrative review at the highest levels on decisions by our state's taxing authorities, like the Comptroller and the State Department of Assessment and Taxation. Welcome, Fagan. Good to see you. We will also receive a briefing from our state's military department, which is responsible for ensuring that we are equipped to respond to emergencies that pose a threat to our state, including incidents like the insurrection at our nation's capital due to our close proximity. We express our gratitude to all the nation's guardsmen and women, as well as the active and reserve duty service soldiers for their service. Finally, we will receive a briefing from the administration and offices of Department of Corrections, which provides the essential policy and administrative direction for the department's overall operation. It's worth noting that the office has been successful in lowering its vacancy rate for administrative positions and is also making progress in implementing several IT projects. I would appreciate any information that you could provide regarding inmate programming, prison work programs, and work release as well. So with that, we'll get started, and I guess I'll welcome either Fagan or PK, or if it's a tag team thing. All right, I'll welcome the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Fagan Harris. You can start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Lewis and members of the subcommittee. I'm Fagan Harris, Chief of Staff in the Office of the Governor. With me today is Mona Vida, Director of Financial Administration. The following written testimony is provided on behalf of the Office of the Governor. We thank you for the opportunity to appear before the subcommittee each year as you review the proposed budget. We would like to thank our assigned analyst, Ms. Victoria Martinez, for her hard work and acknowledgments of our efforts throughout the analysis. She is a pleasure for our office to work with. Thank you for concurring with the Governor's allowance. We're happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you. First, welcome. It's great to meet you as well. A number of the members of the subcommittee were really interested in the innovation team.
Yes.
We weren't familiar with the executive department having special funds, and we know that's a partnership, I believe, with Bloomberg. But if you could explain anything on the concept, it was just kind of interesting to us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. We feel strongly that investments in innovation in this administration are critically important. How to do old work in new ways, to capture efficiency, to save taxpayer dollar, to take a fresh set of eyes to old problems that need new solutions. As you all are very familiar, this governor set out a course to rebuild government. When we took office a year ago, we had seen a great atrophy of the state workforce and a diminishment of the governor's capacity to drive solutions for taxpayers and constituents. Part of that mandate to rebuild government is to make sure government keeps pace with the change that we're seeing in our society. Government needs to move at the pace that working families and businesses expect to ensure that we're providing the best customer and constituent services possible. And so elevating innovation as an imperative of this government, making sure that we have the resources, again, to take new eyes to old problems and to develop a fresh approach is absolutely consistent with Governor Moore's ethos. We had an opportunity to partner with Bloomberg Philanthropies, which is a really effective and well-regarded philanthropy nationally. And that's consistent with our approach of leveraging dollars wherever we can to benefit taxpayers. And so Bloomberg has worked with governments across the country to set up innovation teams. We are the first state government in the country to take this step, something that I think we're really proud of and proud to represent here. And so those special funds will come in and help underwrite at no cost to the taxpayer. Innovation teams, there's no expectation for the taxpayer to pick up the tab when this multi-year grant is exhausted. We'll obviously evaluate the efficacy as we go, and I'll be happy to provide a report to this subcommittee as we learn more.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Harris? Go ahead, Delegate McComas.
Mr. Chair, I think you've answered it, but I just want to make sure it's in blood that, in other words, this is not a 1 year. This is a continuing grant from the Bloomberg. Do you know how long out, how far out, or?
Yes, it's a great question. It is a multi-year grant. I believe it's 3 years. Yeah, it's a 3-year grant.
3 year?
Yep.
Okay.
And it'll enable us to stand up this team and really surge on this question of innovation. And we'll hopefully make a lot of progress in the next 3 years that we can represent back to this subcommittee as we go.
Real quick question. Can we, will that just be for personnel and study as opposed to any like computer programming or any infrastructure for what they decide?
That is correct. It's for personnel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right, seeing none, thank you. I think while we have you, assuming you're the one presenting, we'll move over to the boards and commissions, or is that? No. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Let's do the analyst. My apologies, I hopped ahead. Thank you, Victoria. No, I won't forget about you. You can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Victoria Martinez, and I'm with the Department of Legislative Services. Today, I'll be presenting on the operating budget for the Executive Department, Office of the Governor, for fiscal 2025. As you can see on page 1 of the analysis, in fiscal 2025, the budget increases by $3.4 million, or 19.9%, to $20.6 million. The increase includes $2.2 million in special funds that I will discuss in more detail later in this presentation. Continuing on page 2, there is one proposed deficiency totaling $140,000. The proposed deficiency includes $108,000 for contractual software and food services and $32,000 for supplies. Moving on to Exhibit 1 on page 3, you can see an overview of agency spending in fiscal 2025. As shown in the exhibit, the vast majority, about 85%, or $17 million of the agency spending goes towards personnel expenses in the governor's office, including the governor and lieutenant governor's executive staff, advisors, and other personnel who assist with daily functions of the office. The rest of the agency spending is allocated towards a variety of other functions that you can see in the exhibit. Moving on to the discussion of the proposed budget change on page 4, Exhibit 2 shows the breakdown of the $3.4 million increase from fiscal 2024 working appropriation and fiscal 2025 allowance. The majority of the change in the budget is related to personnel expenses, including a $1.7 million increase in personnel costs associated with 12 new positions. Personnel-related costs also include $927,000 in salary increases due to the fiscal 2024 cost of living adjustment. The budget also increases due to various other operating expenses, including management, studies and consultants, contractual personnel, and routine travel. As discussed on page 5, the budget includes $2.2 million in special funds due to 2 grants, including a $2 million grant from the Bloomberg Philanthropies that you just heard about to create an innovation team that serves as an in-house consultancy to work on state priorities. And the second grant is of $95,000 from the Climate Alliance to support staffing for the Chief Sustainability Officer. As you can see at the end of page 5 in the personnel data section, the fiscal 2025 allowance includes 12 additional regular positions for a total of 112, and an increase of 1.75 contractual full-time equivalent positions for a total of 2.75. The agency currently has 5 vacant positions with a vacancy rate of 5%. And out of the 12 new regular positions, 8 are funded with special funds for the innovation team, as I previously described, One is a transfer from the Maryland Energy Administration for the new Chief Sustainability Officer position, and 3 include positions for a variety of operational purposes. The Chief Sustainability Officer position was transferred to the Executive Department through a fiscal 2024 budget amendment, but that change is not yet reflected in the fiscal 2024 appropriation. And finally, our recommendation, as stated on page 7, is that we concur with the governor's allowance. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Victoria? All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you also, Fagan, for your presentation. So we are going to move on now to the Executive Department Boards and Commissions. So I'll bring on Yashadara for her analysis, and then we'll welcome Special Secretary Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the members of the committee. My name is Yashodhara Rai, and I'll be presenting the analysis for the Boards, Commissions, and Offices unit of the Executive Department. The Boards, Commissions, and Offices contains various entities, and there have been a lot of changes. The State Labor Board's Relations Board has been replaced by the Public Employee Relations Board, PERB. Beginning in fiscal 25, the functions of the Governor's Coordinating Office's Shared Services, GCO, will be realigned to other Executive Department offices. The Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture is now an independent agency and is discussed in a separate analysis. The Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism, Volunteer Maryland, and the Maryland Core Program were transferred to the Department of Service and Civic Innovation in fiscal 24. As shown here on page 1, the budget for the Boards, Commissions, and Offices decreases by approximately $590,000. Turning to page 2, the fiscal 25 budget includes a proposed deficiency appropriation of approximately $14,000 in general fund to fund 1 regular position in Healthcare Alternative Dispute Resolution Office. This position is largely responsible for processing credentialing and filing requests. Turning to Exhibit 1 on page 3, the fiscal 25 allowance includes a total of $11.9 million across 9 programs. The Governor's Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs, GOSPA, accounts for approximately $2.2 million. The Governor's Office of Community Initiatives, GOCI, accounts for approximately $2 million. Turning to Exhibit 2 on pages 4 and 5, the fiscal 25 allowance decreases by approximately $590,000 compared to the fiscal 24 working appropriation. Approximately $969,000 of this decrease is attributed to the disbanding of the GCO unit. This reduction is partially offset by an increase of approximately $473,000 in personnel expenditures, which includes a net addition of 3 new positions in fiscal 25. Turning to page 5, the disbanding of the GCO unit reduces its entire fiscal 24 appropriation of approximately $969,000 in fiscal 25 allowance. According to the Executive Department, some of the Shared Services Unit's functions will be realigned to the Survey Commissions Unit. However, the Shared Services Unit's 4 positions are transferred to PERB and DSCI in the fiscal 24 allowance. We request the agency to comment on the reasons for disbanding the Shared Services Unit and the timeline for implementing this change. We also request the agency to clarify which Shared Services Unit functions will be realigned under Survey Commissions and discuss the overall operational impact. Turning to page 6, the fiscal 25 allowance reflects a net increase of 3 positions across the Boards, Commissions, and Offices. PERB receives 5 new positions in addition to 2 positions transferred from the Shared Services Unit. The 2 remaining positions in the Shared Services are transferred to DSCI, which partially offsets the increase in new PERB positions. Fiscal 25 budgeted turnover rate is 8.07% and aligns with the 10.94% vacancy rate reported as of December 31st, 2023. And of the 7 vacancies reported, 1 position has been vacant for more than a year and 6 positions have been vacant for less than 9 months. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 7, the Minority Business Enterprise MBE participation has improved in recent years, but it is still well below the goal of 29%. Turning to Exhibit 4 on page 8, GOSPA's outreach events for small businesses, which is reflected in the blue bars, have gradually increased to 39 hosted events in fiscal 23. Its events for the procurement community have decreased to 8 events in fiscal 23. The agency liaison survey reports that there were 4 vacant MBE liaison positions and 5 vacant small business reserve liaison positions in fiscal 23. Exhibit 5 on page 9 shows that 71% of MBE liaisons spent an average of 10 hours or less, whereas 17% spent 40 hours or more to administer the MBE program each week. GOSPA has made various improvements, such as moving to an electronic data collection method, increasing video trainings, creating the new liaison orientation training materials, among many others. On January 16th of this year, the governor announced that Nichelle Johnson will be appointed as Maryland's first MBE ombudsman under GOSPA and will be responsible for developing policies and new training programs, overseeing data collection and resolving issues. We request the agency to discuss other methods that could be utilized to further increase MBE and SPR participation and describe how it supports agencies in hiring these program liaisons. The DLS recommends adopting committee narrative, requesting that GOSPA continue to collect and report the findings of the MBE participation and liaison attainment surveys to monitor the state's progress towards achieving its MBE and SPR goals, also including the tracking of the time required to fill vacant liaison positions. Turning to page 10, Public Employee Relations Board replaces the State Labor Relations Board. In fiscal 25, PERB receives 4 new positions and approximately $1.3 million. We request the agency to provide an update on the implementation of the new board, including consolidating previous labor relations boards, hiring new positions, and setting up the board membership requirements. We also request the agency to comment on how the new structure will impact the agency's operations and budget needs in the future. Page 11 is the DLS's recommended action to adopt the committee narrative, requesting that GOSPA continues to administer the agency MBE participation and liaison surveys and report the results, including the time required to fill vacant program liaison positions, to the committee by December 1st, 2024. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Rai? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for your thorough overview. And Secretary Martinez, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you so much. May I ask Nichelle Johnson to sit with me as well? She's our new MBE ombudsman.
Absolutely, and
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair Lewis and members of the subcommittees. The following written testimony is provided on behalf of the boards, commissions, and offices. We thank you for the opportunity to appear before the subcommittees each year as you review the proposed budget. I'm Maria Martinez, Special Secretary of the Governor's Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs. Here with me today is Nichelle Johnson. She's our new MBE ombudsman, and we have additional members of our team: Pamela Gregory, Chief of Staff; Davon Gardner, Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs; Gerald Stinnett, MBE Compliance Manager and VLT Operations. The boards, commissions, and offices are comprised of various budgetary units. My colleagues in attendance today are, if they may stand when I call your name, of course, Moda Vaidya, Director of Financial Administration, Office of the Governor; Lawrence E. Walker, Sr., Executive Director, Governor's Office of Community Initiatives; Jennifer Algair, Executive Director of Maryland State Ethics Commission; Harry L. Chase, Executive Director of Healthcare Alternative Dispute Resolution Office. 31st year. David Soleil, Executive Director of the Maryland State Commission on Criminal Sentencing Policy; Michael Hayes, Chair of the Public Employee Relations Board; Sonia Cho, Chairwoman, Maryland State Board of Contract Appeals. We'd like to thank our sign analyst, Ms. Yashodhara Rai, for her hard work and acknowledgments of our efforts throughout the analysis. She is a pleasure for our office to work with, and we appreciate her guidance. I will start with the first comment on page 5, Governor's Coordinating Office's Shared Services Unit disbanding. Written testimony has been provided, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. One, it's a pleasure for the subcommittee to meet all the folks in the admin that was here, and we appreciate you all coming in person. Two, I'll pause to see if any of my colleagues have any questions. All right, seeing none. Thank you for coming. The only thing I want to say is, of course, we're going to continue to track that immediate attainment goal. I know it's something that you all are very focused on, hence the governor creating a new ombudsman. It's something that we're very focused on. Fourth most diverse state in the union, most diverse in the Eastern Seaboard. If anyone can do it, it should be us. So we're looking forward to working with you hand in glove to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We
No
appreciate
worries.
everything. Thank you.
All right, have a great day.
Thank you, you as well.
All right, and now, Ms. Rye, we'll move to the military department for analysis, and then we'll welcome our Adjutant General, Burkhead, to present to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the members of the committee. My name is Yashodhara Rai, and I'll be presenting the analysis for the military department. The military department provides overall direction and maintenance of the Maryland National Guard, MDNG, comprised of the Maryland Army National Guard and the Maryland Air National Guard. As shown here on page 1, the budget for the department increases by $3.7 million in fiscal 25. Turning to page 2, a proposed deficiency appropriation of $125,000 in general funds supplements the fiscal 24 budget to fund 10 Maryland National Guard personnel put on state active duty to support the National Guard Challenge Program in Free State Challenge Academy, FCA. The department's fiscal 24 operating budget does not include state active duty funding before the deficiency. Exhibit 1 on page 2 shows a total of approximately $41 million in the department's fiscal 25 allowance. 54.4% of the allowance is appropriated for personnel expenses across the administrative headquarters, state operations, and the Army and Air National Guards, including 227.5 regular positions and 13 contractual full-time equivalents. The remaining appropriations reflect each program's respective operational expenses, as well as any grants and subsidies, including the TRICARE Premium Reimbursement Program. Turning to Exhibit 2 on pages 3 and 4, the fiscal 25 allowance increases by $3.7 million compared to the fiscal 24 working appropriation after accounting for the proposed deficiency appropriation. Approximately $1.4 million of the change is due to the repair and maintenance of the Army National Guard facilities, including one-time funding to update fire suppression systems in the department. Personnel data on page 5 shows that 23 vacancies were reported as of December 31st, 2023. Of these, 3 positions have been vacant for more than 12 months, and 20 positions have been vacant for less than 9 months. We request the agency to comment on the primary areas of the vacancies, how these vacancies may be affecting operations, and its plan to improve recruitment and retention. Additionally, 13 firefighters were transferred from the military department to the Maryland Department of Transportation, MDOT, in fiscal 23. This did not involve the transfer of authorized positions from the department to MDOT and were instead reclassed into other positions within the department. We request the agency to comment on where in the department the positions were transferred, the functions of the positions, and whether these positions are currently vacant or filled. Exhibit 3 on page 6 shows that the Maryland Air National Guard has consistently maintained 100% functionality in their facilities through fiscal 2019 to 2023. The Maryland Army National Guard has failed to meet the MDNG's goal of 95% in all fiscal years. Fiscal 25 allowance includes $2.5 million decrease for Army National Guard facility maintenance, which is split between general and federal funds for contracts and grants. Exhibit 4 on page 7 shows that the department has repeatedly attained the required 90% of the federally defined authorized troop strength from fiscal 2019 through fiscal 23, except in fiscal 21, which is primarily due to COVID-19. The authorized troop strength reached 94% in fiscal 22 and 23 due to changes in recruitment and retention screening protocols in compliance with Department of Defense requirements. Exhibit 5 on page 8 presents the FCA performance measures. FCA aims to have at least 80% of its graduates continue their schooling, find employment, or enter the military. However, it has yet to meet this goal and is reflected in the yellow bars. The blue bars represent the GED pass rates, which improved in fiscal 23 and reached 50%. The red dots show the number of enrolled students and was the highest in fiscal 23 at 228 students. No classes were held in fiscal 21. Most of the FCA staffs were reallocated to support pandemic relief measures, and the budgeted funds were used to begin construction on infrastructure improvements. Turning to page 9, the TRICARE Premium Reimbursement Program was established by Chapter 612 of 2023. Under this program, the department awards grants of up to $60 per month to an eligible recipient, defined as an individual who is eligible for the TRICARE Reserve Select TRS coverage and is a member of MDNG. This program officially launched on November 1st, 2023, and Exhibit 6 provides the current program premiums. The military department indicates that 383 eligible personnel are currently enrolled in the program from November 1st, 2023 to Jan 17th, 24. 75.2% of the total enrolled are Maryland Army National Guard members, and the remaining are Maryland Air National Guard members. We request the agency to comment on their plan to increase program participation. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative for a report on the TRICARE program implementation, its participation, including participation rate, how it plans to increase program participation, and average grant amounts for fiscal 24 and 25. Page 11 is the DLS's recommended action to adopt the committee narrative. This concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Any questions? All right, thank you for your thorough overview. We appreciate it, and we'll welcome the Adjutant General. Good afternoon. You can begin when ready.
Honorable Chair and distinguished members of the subcommittee, I am Major General Janine L. Burkhead. I serve as the 31st Adjutant General of Maryland and the Commander of the Maryland National Guard. The members of the Military Department thank Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller, the Department of Budget and Management, the Department of Legislative Services, and the Budget Committee for their support. The civilians, soldiers, and airmen of the Maryland National Guard are honored to serve the people of Maryland. We proudly respond to state emergencies, from calls for assistance during extreme weather emergencies on the Eastern Shore to putting shots in hundreds of arms during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Maryland Military Department is steadfast in giving back to our communities, while our citizen soldiers and citizen airmen remain ready to fight and win our nation's wars. To do these things, we need effective and an efficient budget. The Department of Legislative Services, to DVM, and this subcommittee, we submitted questions to MMD. We have responded to those questions in writing, and I'm here today in person to provide additional context. With my remaining time, I will focus on our agency's most important asset, and that is our people. Our recruiting, retention, and readiness efforts are ineffective without competitive benefits. For our part-time Army and Air Service members, Governor Moore's Healthcare for Heroes program launched on November 1st and is one such area where we can use for recruiting, retention, and readiness. Our team is conducting an aggressive outreach campaign to enroll additional Guard members across Maryland. As an agency, we consistently search for people to join the Maryland Military Department family, from hosting the statewide job fairs at the 5th Regiment Armory to raising the pay scale for our team members. The Maryland Military Department is actively participating in Governor Moore's mission to rebuild state government. Following Governor Moore's leadership in leaving no one behind, the Maryland Military Department's Free State Challenge program provides a 22-week free tuition education residential program for over 100 at-risk youth across Maryland. Together, the department's proposed budget and the Moore-Miller administration's FY25 budget's investments in public safety will ensure healthy military families develop good habits for our young people and contribute to a safer and more sustainable Maryland. Thank you. I'll take your questions.
Any questions? Doug Spiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General, thank you very much for your service. I want to especially compliment you on your readiness levels, which have been impressive in the analysis. I have a question which is a bit in the weeds, so I will certainly understand if you're unable to answer it on the spot. But I wanted to ask about this transfer of 13 firefighters from the department over to MDOT that was discussed in the analysis and the written testimony. I guess my question is, for the positions within the department that were reclassified, could we get information on what the salary schedules and grades were for those new positions that were the pins were used for after that? Just kind of interested in how those compare to the scales for the firefighter positions that were moved over to MDOT. Thank you.
Certainly, we'll get you that information.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any further questions? I see none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day to you and your
too.
team. Now we'll move on to Maryland Tax Court. So Jacob, if you could come do the DLS analysis. And then we'll welcome the judge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So again, Jacob Polikov to present the DLS analysis for the Maryland Tax Court. Just a refresher, the Tax Court is an independent state agency tasked with providing the highest level of administrative review on the decisions of Maryland's taxing authorities. Appeals from MTC further are directed to the circuit courts, and MTC is composed of 5 judges appointed by the governor for 6-year terms. The fiscal 25 budget for the Maryland Tax Court increases by $16,019, or 1.7%, to a total of $967,989, as seen in the summary on page 1. Moving to page 2, we have Exhibit 1, which is a large overview of the agency spending, and we see that a majority of the fiscal 25 allowance is allocated to personnel expenses, with the remainder going to contractual services, supplies, materials, and several other small categories. Moving to page 3, we have a list of proposed budget changes in Exhibit 2. As previously stated, the allowance for MTC grows 1.7% from fiscal 24's working appropriation. Some of the, really the two big changes I want to mention are some reclassification expenses, as well as additional funding for training courses for judges. Moving to page 4, Maryland Tax Court's number of positions, both regular positions and contractual FTEs, has not changed in several years, and it remains the same this year. They have 9 regular positions and 0.4 contractual FTEs, with no vacancies currently. On page 5, we have the key observation, which regards the decrease in appeals and the increased clearance rates, which meet one of the 2 benchmarks. There were 742 appeals filed with the tax court in fiscal 23, which was a decrease of 85 total appeals from the prior year. The number of appeals does continue to remain below pre-pandemic levels, and clearance rates have similarly returned to pre-pandemic levels. MTC has multiple benchmarks set for clearance of appeals. According to their Managing for Results data, the percentage of appeals to be opened, heard, and closed within 8 months is to be 90%, and the percentage to be closed within 12 months is also 90%, so that they could see the difference, how many cases are cleared in 8 months versus 12 months, how much closer they get to that 90% in those extra 4 months. In fiscal 2023, Maryland Tax Court succeeded in clearing 90% of cases within 12 months, but only 78% of cases were cleared within 8 months. Data regarding the appeal statistics for Maryland Tax Court is shown in full in Exhibit 3, again on page 5. Now, Maryland Tax Court has cited several factors as contributing to the failure to clear 90% of cases within 8 months. There's a variety of factors here, including an administrative process, which is heavily reliant on paper records, postponements which are requested by litigants in the appeal hearings, and a longer than expected time needed between the end of an appeal and the issuance of a signed order from a judge, which formally closes the case, which can sort of be put with the administrative process delays. So as previously mentioned, those administrative process delays, their procedures utilize a lot of paper, a lot of things recorded on paper that are later entered into their case management system by administrative staff. And the database is somewhat antiquated. It was designed for the tax court by the Maryland Department of Planning more than a decade ago and lacks several features that a modern database would include. For example, a method for the public to file appeals online and capabilities which would make the system more efficient for MTC staff by reducing the need for paper documents. MTC has indicated statutory changes would be necessary in order for appeals to be filed online. The incorporation of a new database would potentially lessen MTC's administrative burden, leading to faster processing of appeals and better service for Marylanders who appeal their cases through the agency. One of the other big things that goes into the extended case times is postponements and appeals, which again are mostly requested by litigants and are only requested by MTC if a judge needs to reschedule a hearing due to an illness or another unforeseen reason. Postponements don't halt the calculation of time an appeal takes from the filing, from the date of filing to the date of disposition. So for instance, that clock starts running the date the appeal is filed, and even if there's a postponement, whether it's 3 weeks or 3 months, that clock keeps running, even though it's not up to MTC to keep the case moving at that point. There's been a postponement requested. So this impact on MTC statistics could be clarified through additional reporting of the number of postponements lasting a certain number of days or the percentage of cases impacted by postponements each year. MTC has also stated that work is ongoing to decrease the amount of time needed following a hearing, settlement, or withdrawal of an appeal for a judge to issue a signed order which formally closes the case. The current extended amount of time for the order to be signed is in part due to MTC's previously mentioned slower administrative processes, which are heavily focused on paper. Because it takes time for paperwork to progress through the agency, the order sometimes is not signed for a number of days after the hearing concludes or the appeal is settled or withdrawn. And all appeals, regardless of how they conclude, require a signed order to be closed. MTC should therefore comment on any plans for identifying and implementing a new case management system. Additionally, MTC should also work with the Department of Budget and Management to add metrics regarding appeal postponements to its annual performance measures. On page 7, you'll find that the DLS operating budget recommended action is to concur with the governor's allowance, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jacob. Colleagues, any questions for Jacob? Seeing none, thank you so much. Judge, if you can join us when you're ready. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Lewis and Vice Chair Ivey, esteemed members of the subcommittee. My name is Andrew Berg. I'm actually the clerk of the court representing the chief judge and obviously the court in general, our 5 judges. We'd like to thank you all for giving us the time to speak with you this afternoon. We also obviously like to thank Jacob Polikoff's thorough analysis as well as his final recommendation to the subcommittee. Written testimony had been provided already. I know that we had addressed in the testimony our ongoing efforts to sort of come into the, I think it's, as we talked about some, it's 20th century, but even maybe a little bit faster than that. As was discussed, our records are paper-based. We are the sort of depository of the public record for these cases and these appeals. And our case management system is lacking, but we are undergoing regulatory changes to make sure that we can take certain things via electronic methods. We are have already been discussing with the Do It team about helping procure a new case management system. We've also been speaking with the Department of Planning to help bring our case management system up to speed to the extent that that's possible on their end. And we actually have spoken to some private vendors to see what options are out there. The second point that I'd just like to quickly address are the managing for results metric changes that we did not do last year, but it is something that our staff is interested in updating to make sure that such data as the postponement requests can be sort of parceled out to make sure that our metrics are being met. And with that, I'd entertain any questions that the members have.
Thank you, colleagues. Any questions? Delegate Spiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clerk, welcome. The analysis made mention of the fact that there might need to be some statutory changes in order for the court to be able to fully embrace online filings and electronic filings and communications with litigants. And then you mentioned in your testimony that there are some regulatory processes underway to try to maybe address some of that as well. And as the clerk, you may actually be the best person to ask this question of rather than one of the judges. But I'm trying to understand whether there really is a need for some statutory changes there in order to assist the work of the tax court in trying to implement some of these modernizations, or whether it really is just an internal court rulemaking process that needs to happen. Certainly, if there is a statutory language that needs to be changed, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to point to a particular provision today, but we'd love to know at some point, what that particular portion of code is that might be holding the court back. Thank you.
I will be happy to check back on the statutory changes. I know there is one regulatory COMAR change that is about filing the initial appeal right now must be in person or hard copy. And so if we can work with our AG's office to make sure that an electronic filing would be allowable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Spiegel. So I have a follow-up, and this is on the case management system writ large. I know, given the statutory changes that will eventually come, there's going to be interest in procuring a new system that is, not from the 90s or 80s, wherever it's from. Given, I would imagine, and I can be wrong here, but I can imagine that some of the features you would want are similar to what OAH has, Office of Administrative Hearings. I know there's talks that you reference with Department of Information Technology and outside vendors on a system, but has there been any consideration of piggyback on already existing state contracts for something that could be unique for you guys? I just wonder if there's been any consideration of that.
There has been internal consideration. There hasn't been any dialogue between any agency except DO-IT and Department of Planning. But your point is well taken, Chair Lewis. And yeah, we're not interested in rewriting the entire system. I mean, that's just not cost effective, I think. And so reaching out to other state agencies who have similar missions, but also maybe similar case management technology would definitely benefit the state, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely encourage you guys to explore it. Sometimes it's cheaper to just build a system that's different because, what you're doing is so differently. But I think if it can be done more expeditiously and save money, it should definitely be considered. And we'd love to help you with that. Any further questions, colleagues? I see none. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So we're going to welcome Jacob Cash to do his overview of the administrative side and operations side of Department of Corrections, and Secretary Scruggs when you and your team are ready after that. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Jacob Cash. I'm a budget analyst for the Department of Legislative Services, and today I'll be presenting the budget analysis for the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Administration, and Offices. This unit includes the Executive Office of the Secretary, the Office of the Deputy Secretary for Operations, as well as the Maryland Commission on Correctional Standards and the Inmate Grievance Office. Fiscal 2025, the fiscal 2025 budget is $211.5 million, which is a 6% increase of about $12 million. In this presentation, I'll go through the performance evaluation, followed by the budget discussion and personnel discussion, and then major issues. Key observations are summarized on page 2, as well as the recommended budget actions, but I'll be getting to all of these in just a moment. Beginning with the performance evaluation on page 4, Exhibit 1 shows the single-year recidivism rates for releases over the past 7 years. There was a slight dip due to court processing delays during the pandemic, but the fiscal 2022 release cohort showed sustained reductions in recidivism compared to fiscal 2021 and the pre-pandemic period. Interestingly, prior to the pandemic, mandatory releases had lower recidivism rates than expiration of sentence releases, and those released on mandatory release would have diminution credits, which reduces the amount of time they need to spend in facilities, whereas those who wait until their sentence expires are not subject to supervision. Mandatory releases are subject to supervision. So it's interesting that that trend flip-flopped after the pandemic, and now mandatory releases have higher recidivism, at least for single-year results, compared to expiration of sentence releases. Exhibit 2 on page 6 shows the 3-year recidivism. This is for the fiscal 2020 cohort. And this differs from that first exhibit because it not only looks at a longer period of time, but it also considers whether the offender was returned to probation or had their community supervision revoked versus simply arrested on a new offense. There was, these rates are overall pretty similar to the fiscal 2019 cohort. They were all at least, or they were all equal to or lower than the rates for that cohort, except technical violations of supervision actually reduced by about 15% compared to the fiscal 2019 cohort. So there's been an improvement in those returned to correctional supervision off of technicalities. Moving on to contraband, I'll point out on page 7, there's information regarding 2 recently indicted criminal conspiracies involving 12 individuals in the first case and 15 individuals in the second case. In the first set of indictments, a nurse contractor was identified as the individual bringing in contraband, and in the second set of indictments, an incarcerated individual was identified as paying outside facilitators to drop contraband onto facility grounds via drone technology. The department has completed a major IT project that implemented a drone detection and mitigation system for prison grounds across the state so that they can avoid situations like that where outside facilitators are dropping contraband onto DPSCS property. Moving on to page 8, this Exhibit 3 shows the number of contraband fines by type that are found by the K-9 unit. This is one of the units of the administration, and the overall driver has been Suboxone film over the past few years. Suboxone film is highly divisible and concealable, so it created a large issue that peaked in fiscal 2021. But the department has somewhat gotten that under control, particularly with hiring more for the contraband unit and hiring more canines to work with the contraband animal handlers. They have also, in fiscal 2024, there's funding for mailroom renovations to make it so that it's harder for Suboxone to come into facilities as well as any other type of contraband. Exhibit 4 on page 9 breaks down contraband fines by type and shows all contraband that was found in facilities regardless of the way that it was found. So more than just the contraband unit. This is any officer or otherwise contraband that was found. These show the occurrences, and there has been a growth in weapons, tools for escape, cell phones, and alcohol. However, the overall contraband trend this year was a reduction because of reductions in controlled dangerous substances and tobacco fines. Moving on to Exhibit 6 on page 11. This was newly reported in the MFR this year, and this is the summary of program participation across the department. This includes education, work release, and various reentry programs. They were affected by the pandemic, and in fiscal 2021, we saw a trough in that participation. It's been the subject of a few issues written in DPSCS analyses. In the DPSCS overview, DLS recommended that committee narrative be adopted, requesting annual programming participation and non-participation data be provided in the MFR, which would provide much more detail than this summary, and go into those that are not only have a primary assignment in one of these programs, but perhaps a secondary or tertiary assignment. Moving on to the budget, the allowance of $211.5 million is broken down in Exhibit 7 on page 13. About 3/4 of the funding for this unit goes to the Executive Office of the Secretary and the larger administrative units within the office. And about 1/4 goes to inmate programs and services within the Office of the Deputy Secretary for Operations. The proposed budget change is outlined in Exhibit 8 on page 14 and continuing on to page 15. The largest increases are for salary increases as well as positions transferred into the agency from other units. Those transfers are outlined in Exhibit 9 on page 18. Oh, sorry, Exhibit 10 on page 19. There's also some IT cost increases for the criminal justice information systems as well as departmental IT support, although those were partially offset by decreases to IT infrastructure spending that was provided in fiscal 2024. Moving on to personnel, vacancies have greatly improved from 22% last year to 13% as of December 1st. Vacancies only increased in 3 sub-programs of this unit, including the Central Transportation Unit, Substance Abuse Services, and the Deputy Secretary of Operations headquarters. Those vacancies are outlined in Exhibit 9 on page 18. And there's currently higher vacancy rates in the Deputy Secretary of Operations than the Office of the Secretary. The first major issue I'll be talking about is major IT projects, and this begins on page 20. DPSCS has been carrying out 6 major IT projects for at least 4 years, but in some cases over 10 years. And of those 6 projects, about 3 of them have been squared away by DPSCS and they have been completed, including the MAFIS fingerprinting system replacement, an enterprise resource planning tool for the Maryland Correctional Enterprises, as well as that drone detection and mitigation project I previously mentioned. An additional project, the learning management system replacement for the Police Correctional Training Commissions, has a contract in place that was approved in October of this year, and that will be being carried out in the next 5 years. Of the remaining projects, there are 2, the electronic patient health record and the computerized criminal history. DPSCS has solicited one of them, and the computerized criminal history, and is anticipating a solicitation for the electronic patient health record. For the EPHR, or the electronic patient health record, a contract was previously awarded in October 2020, but the vendor had performance deficiencies, and in May of 2022, since attempts to rectify those issues were unsuccessful, the contract was canceled. The department still needs that replacement though, and so the legacy contractor has been installing system improvements in the meantime for about $2.7 million. The total replacement project is expected to cost at least $21.6 million, and that's tentatively estimated for completion in June of 2027, but that's pending the current procurement schedule. the procurement schedule was anticipated for release in, or it was, sorry, excuse me, 1 second. Yes, they're expected to release it by the end of this fiscal year, so there's still some time, but if they're not quick in releasing the RFP, we'll see some more delays. For the computerized criminal history, that project was previously solicited as an on-premises solution, but during procurement, it was switched to a cloud-based solution, and so that caused some of the applicants to drop out, and eventually that, even though an award was made, that contract was pulled from consideration so that the procurement could be restarted as a cloud-based solution. The new solicitation was released in fiscal 2023, and while an award was expected to be made by June of 2023, that date was not met, and there still has not been an award made. Both of these projects are important for DPSES, not only because there's important technological advancements that they're behind on, but the current systems have countless workarounds and band-aids and disconnections to systems that they need connections to that can result in reporting delays, inaccuracies, and sometimes discrepancies in patient care. Furthermore, there is an ongoing legal settlement, the Duval v. Hogan settlement agreement. I'll note the analysis incorrectly states that it expired in December of this past year. The plaintiffs did request, and that extension was granted until June of this year. So there's still some time to comply with Duval. However, if the EPHR is not replaced in a timely manner, or those improvements to the current system are not made in a timely manner, they may still be opened up to legal liabilities. Moving on to the next issue, this issue regards the Public Information Act. The Maryland Public Information Act Compliance Board was granted additional powers in 2022, so they can now determine whether an agency has unlawfully denied inspection of a public record or failed to respond to a request within the established time limits. Since the expansion, DPSES has been complained against 6 times and ruled against in all six cases. The results are compiled in Exhibit 11 on page 22, and the 6 complaints were for 6 unique situations filed by 5 individuals. Of the 6 complaints, only 1 complainant received their requested information before that complaint was made. All other complaints had resulted in a ruling by the Compliance Board that DPSES must provide the requested materials, except for 1 case in which not enough information was available to make that determination. In 3 of the rulings, DPSES was required to waive their fees associated with responding to the request. And DPSES has been the most complained against state agency. In the other complaints heard by the board, only the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Systems, Maryland 529, and the Maryland Department of the Environment have been complained against. And in only 1 of those cases was the department found to be in violation of the law. There's 2 other pending cases, one for the Maryland Department of Human Services and one for the University of Maryland College Park. However, at this point, public safety is the most complained against and State Department that is in violation of the Public Information Act the most. In fact, the communication, even with the board, was so, DPSES was failing to communicate even with the compliance board, and because of that lack of communication, the compliance board requested acknowledgement be provided via an email when public safety received those communications, at least on 3 separate occasions. However, public safety did not provide those acknowledgement emails. So there is a concerning lack of communication and denial of inspection of public records. And so DLS is asking DPSES to comment on efforts to increase their transparency, train records custodians to correctly identify PIA exemptions, and avoid complaints being brought to the compliance board. Additionally, DLS recommends adding budget bill language restricting $100,000 in general funds pending a written plan to comply with the PIA. Finally, there's a 3rd issue regarding private home detention monitoring agencies, or PHDMAs. There's been concern in the past that current regulations are too weak to elicit compliance from them. In other states and the federal government, regulations allow fees to be levied against violators. However, in Maryland, the only recourse is to revoke that PHDMA license outright. DPSCS points out that the Maryland Commission on Correctional Standards is not frequently in the practice of regulating private entities. They're primarily responsible for making rules for state and local agencies. And they point out perhaps other state agencies like the Maryland Insurance Administration could have more experience or better practices in monitoring and sanctioning private companies. It's possible, just as a conclusion, that statutory or regulatory changes might be needed in order to hold these agencies more accountable for the law. The recommended actions begin on page 26. The first, as I mentioned with just that previous issue, is to restrict funds pending a written plan to comply with the Public Information Act. The second recommended action is to request the annual Justice Reinvestment Act report. The third is to request the annual report on 3-year recidivism. The fourth is to request participation measures be provided in the MFR. And the fifth, as mentioned in the DPSCS overview analysis, DLS is recommending that public safety provide notification when an award is made for either the correctional, medical and mental health contract or the pretrial medical and mental health care contract. But that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jacob, for your thorough overview. Colleagues, do you all have any questions? Vice Chair Ivy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the analysts. I really appreciate the work that you've done, and to all of them that have been here today. My question, because, you know, I was on this committee last year, I see that, so one of the recommended actions is to withhold $100,000 until there's a written plan. And I guess I just want to figure out where the $100,000 comes from, because I don't feel like that really moves the needle. It didn't last year, so where did that come from?
This would be from the Office of the Secretary. So Exhibit 7 shows how the funds are broken out in this unit. There's $20 million, about $20.3 million in the Office of the Secretary. So that would be restricting about $100,000. It's not specific. It's not for a specific appropriation, so it could be in any of the funds they would use in that budget for that year.
Yeah, I guess it's a rhetorical question, but I appreciate your answer. Mr. Chairman, sorry.
No worries. Any further questions for Jacob? Are seeing none. I welcome the Secretary and her team for your briefing. And you can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Lewis, Vice Chair Ivy, members of the committee. I am Carolyn J. Scruggs, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me here today are Deputy Secretary for Administration, Joseph Siddall, Annie Harvey, Deputy Secretary of Operations, and Nigel Roberts, our Chief Financial Officer. I also have in the audience with me Stanley Lofton, who is our Chief Information Officer, and Earl Edding, Executive Director of Intelligence and Investigative Division for DPSCS. As always, we appreciate the ongoing collaboration with the Department of Legislative Services, and Mr. Cash, we thank you for your thorough analysis. The analysis requested the department to respond to 1 issue and 5 recommended actions. Before we address the issue and recommended actions, I again would like to say that I am very proud of the work that the department's employees do as they continue to uphold the safety and security of our facilities, the health and safety of our employees, visitors, and incarcerated individuals. I would like to highlight the work of the department's Intelligence and Investigation Division, the men and women responsible for conducting criminal and administrative investigations into allegations of serious misconduct within the department. This division also serves as the department's liaison with allied, federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, providing investigative services and support in a variety of ways. Because of the work of IID, the Security Operations Division, the Department's K-9 unit, and the Watch Center and drone detection programs, overall contraband recovery, and I'll say it again, overall contraband recoveries have increased steadily over the last 5 years. These units have been able to collectively combat the challenge of new technology attempting to get past our facility security protocol. Contraband enters the facilities in a variety of ways, including visitation, mail breaches, breaches of perimeter security, and through the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, which we know as drones. You may be familiar with the IID investigation last year that resulted in the indictment of 15 individuals for conspiracies to smuggle illegal drugs and other contraband into Roxbury Correctional Institution. At least one of these incidents involved using drones to fly contraband over the secure perimeter fence of the facility. IID initiated the investigation and immediately enlisted the assistance of prosecutors with the Office of the Attorney General as the case progressed. The department is appreciative of the strong partnership with the Attorney General's office in our efforts to combat contraband introduction. The department has introduced legislation prohibiting individuals from operating a drone delivering contraband over the correctional facility. I hope we have your support in that effort. Now moving on to the issues. We were asked to brief the committee on efforts to increase transparency, train records custodians to correctly identify Public Information Act exemptions, and avoid complaints being brought to the Maryland PIA Compliance Board. The department understands the importance of timely responses of PIA requests. The department regrets the mishandling of the PIA requests and has been working to put measures in place that will correct the issue and ensure that it does not happen again. The department has completely overhauled its Office of Constituent Services, hiring new management and expanding the office that oversees the PIA process and ensuring strict adherence to PIA law. The office is now housed directly in the Office of the Secretary. Since the overhaul, we've resolved all the outstanding PIA requests for calendar year 2023. The new director and manager of OCS have received training conducted by the Maryland PIA Compliance Board Ombudsman Office. The training focused on the requirements of responding to the request in accordance with the PIA law. With regards to the recommended actions for the department concurs in whole with the first 4 recommendations and in part with the last. As it pertains to the final recommendation, the department will provide a report on the award recommendation, both medical and mental health contracts, upon the official publication to the Board of Public Works agenda and presenting it as approved. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? We'll begin with the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, and to your entire team for the work that you've been doing. It's wonderful to hear recidivism rates going down, so much progress being made in your agency, and I just want us to be able to spend time talking about the good things that are taking place, because we're all on the same page here. We're all on the same team. We want to move forward. We want progress here in the state of Maryland. To hear about the lack of response, it's really tough. We serve in an oversight capacity here, and so, you know, it's nice to hear that you agree with the recommendations. And, you know, I was looking back here. Recommendation is to withhold $100,000 until you have a written plan that's been submitted. Do you already have that ready to go for us?
For the PIA request you're referring to? So yes, we do. So we actually started that entire unit over. Mm-hmm. Everyone in that unit was either removed or relocated to somewhere else. Yeah. We have hired a new director as well as a manager. That unit now comes under the Deputy Chief of Staff, in my office. And we have on next Wednesday, we have additional 4 individuals that are starting, and the following pay period, an additional 1. What I'm happy to say about the caliber of those individuals is many of them are attorneys. So they are equipped with not just the skill set to make good decisions, but they have the legal mindset to make sure that things are done in an appropriate manner and are done in a timely manner.
Mr. Chairman, my real question would just be if you could work with committee staff to really focus on this first piece here. Of course, all the recommendations are very significant, but for me personally, it's just so glaring that I would request that we work on this and get updated as to where you stand today, because I'm not looking to be adversarial here, but this is our job.
Absolutely.
We're supposed to provide oversight. So,
and I can tell you, since November, when we started and we revamped that department, we've already responded to over 200 of those. There were some 600 going back to 2021.
Yep.
And we've responded to some 200 of them already. So we're happy to work with you in any capacity as we move forward.
Absolutely. I mean, we all understand, you'll respond to 100 people, but that one person you didn't, that's who you're going to hear from.
Correct, because when we looked at the 6 that were referenced in the report, 6 of them were denied by the board, and 3 of them were denied by the board, and the other 3 failed to even respond when we reached out. So,
thank you again for your work. Appreciate it.
thank you.
I appreciate the Vice Chair point because, when we don't respond to constituents, we get voted out. So this is shared accountability. Any other questions? Okay, I have a couple. The first I wanted to go to, can you explain, I am not a chemist, so Suboxone, what exactly is that? What type of product is that?
So the way that we're seeing it, it is a controlled dangerous substance. The way that we usually see it come in is in looks like a piece of paper, a film. They can actually hide it under a stamp. Sometimes the film is so small that you can hide it between a piece of paper, a thin piece of paper. So they are very creative in the ways that it comes in. Oftentimes we're seeing a lot of it, unfortunately, coming through legal mail. That's where we're catching it because they know that the attorney mails have a better chance of getting into the facility than normal mail. So, but again, it is a controlled dangerous substance. It is used, maybe you're more familiar with methadone. It is used very similar to methadone, especially when you are detoxing an individual from substance use disorder.
Got it. So it still has like some degree of those narcotic effects.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Can you explain to me, as an analyst had on evidence-based programming for some of the work that our inmates are doing? I know one example was education and whatnot, but there's this other broader section of evidence-based programming. What is included in evidence-based programming?
Thank you for that question. So we work very closely in conjunction with Department of Labor, and Department of Labor then ensures that we have evidence-based programming that has national accreditation to it that directly relates to the industry need so that these individuals can be certified in those areas. So the Department of Labor actually does the research for us to see what that industry need and to make sure that that accreditation is industry within industry standard. So the evidence-based is basically the research that has been done to determine the need for that program.
That's really good to know. So with these, programs as, training or allowing these inmates to provide services, is there any feedback loop when folks are released for jobs? I know this is a constant thing we talk about in different ways, but I'm just wondering if we're partnering with Department of Labor on the front end with evidence-based program, are they getting jobs on the back end?
Great question, sir. So we also, as part of our reentry efforts, we again would partner with Department of Labor, and they have what are called reentry navigators. These navigators are throughout the state of Maryland, and our reentry specialists then connect that returning citizen with that navigator so that they can go to one of the American Job Centers located in the jurisdiction where they are returning. And it helps them to find employment based on the trade that they have acquired while they were incarcerated.
Thank you. So another question that I had is going back to the MPIA, but this is a slightly different approach. Obviously, for the size and the work that corrections does, you're going to get a lot more requests than some other agencies or departments. So I guess my question is, one of staffing. Like I guess how you were running through the positions you're bringing on, but I guess is there any type of formula connected to like based off your size, how many people you need to staff that office? Because you're more likely to miss something or get behind if you only have, let's say, you use the example a second ago of like 600 requests going back to 2021. I imagine if you have 3 people having to go through that, or 4 people compared to 10 or something. So can you explain that a little bit to me?
So
like,
I think that is exactly why you're seeing the increase in the staffing that you see now. Historically, the PI requests sat under the Office of Communications within that communications department, and there was one person that was identified as handling those requests. That one person typically would then distribute that information out to the necessary units to get feedback so that they could respond appropriately. By developing the Office of Constituency Services and putting it closer in the Office of the Secretary, bringing in now a manager, a director, and 5 other individuals that will look independently at these, we think that we are meeting those staffing needs. And we did have to look at pens that we had not used and reallocate and reclass some pens just so that we could develop this opportunity.
Okay. So I understand some of those pens you just mentioned are doing things other than just MPIA, but generally speaking, now we have 7 pens that are overlooking MPIA.
They're dedicated to PIA.
All right. I just want to make sure that was clear. The last thing I was going to ask you was if you could elaborate a little bit more on efforts taken to accelerate the replacement of that EPHR system. Just anything else you can opine on that for us?
Okay. You want to talk about it, Joe?
So we're currently working on the specification and preparing the RFP to, again, the goal is to get it released before the end of the fiscal year, which would, I believe, keep us on track as has previously been identified by DLS. Ultimately, it's a brand new system, right? It's complicated. We've already had in this scenario, I suppose, not a failed procurement, but a failed contract in the past a couple years back. So really taking those lessons learned and applying it to a new specification to ensure that we have a system that will meet all the 12 requirements and get us going effectively going forward.
What would you say is your confidence level of by the end of the fiscal year of this being done? 90% confident? How are you feeling?
I try not to put numbers on my confidence. I feel good about it. I think I can tell you that. I know we've been working together as a team trying to bring all the different stakeholders together, and hopefully we can get the ball rolling. I know procurement is under me, so as soon as it's ready to go through procurement, it's going to be a top priority for the agency.
Another one on procurement, which is a regular for us. This is probably piggybacking from, I knew I was coming here. But the tax court is, so a number of areas in state government are using Amazon Web Services or other cloud-based services already that they're starting to deploy. For example, last year we passed a bill that will require all of our public-facing police entities in the state, so that's whether that's state police, county, or municipal police, transit police, to fall under a master contract for body-worn cameras, okay? That has an option for leveraging shared cloud storage. The only reason I bring this up is because I know with the procurements and stuff that are coming forward, corrections is unique, but I would encourage you guys to participate in that process if there's ways that there can be some efficiencies leveraged, okay?
Absolutely.
The last thing I was going to say on the notification for contract award, I understand, I appreciate the response on the Friday when the agenda, because that award may come up during session or not during session where we're not all here, the ability for us as a body to respond may not be as immediate. So to agree, we can know before the agenda is released, even if it's just a day or two before, it gives us more time to provide feedback, because I would prefer not to be texting our Board of Public Works members while they're up there, right? Which we do, which is, I'm sure is no surprise to you guys, but more notice is always better than less. Thank you guys so much. All right, any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.